Right. Hi again. There's some stuff I wanted to mention about Crowley. I just the last video I just was like petering out. Okay, just quickly, one of the things that was interesting about the documentary I watched recently. Crowley had this. It seems that Crowley had this love child with this woman who was married in Paris. She came to visit a friend of hers and ended up like as a kind of like foursome with this other couple, and Crowley was like the loose end, and this other woman, this married woman, ended up all staying in the same place. And Crowley started like having sex with this woman, like doing sex magic and stuff, right? He was into sex magic. He's like anyway, the upshot is that when this woman went back to America, she lived in America. She ended up having a child 8 months later. So it was pretty much obviously Crowley's child, right? And that was a daughter. Her name was Barbara, and she married George Bush Sr. So George W. Bush, the president of America a few years ago, seems to be the grandchild of Aleister Crowley. That's just an interesting little fact. Okay, about the Book of the Law. I've just been watching another documentary about from Robert Anton Wilson, who wrote the Illuminatus trilogy. The Illuminatus trilogy epilogue, which was called Cosmic Trigger. And I read that when I was about 17, and it did talk about Crowley. One of the things that got me interested in Crowley, supposed to be pronounced Crowley rather than Crowley. Most people pronounce it Crowley, but it's supposed to be pronounced Crowley. Anyway, so Robert Anton Wilson, really interesting guy. He was the editor of Playboy magazine from 1966 to 72. And what the Illuminatus trilogy was as a compendium. It was him and this other guy, another author, putting together all the strange letters from the readers of Playboy magazine that they'd got over that 6-year period, and made a book about it, and wove a lot of these stories and conspiracy theories and stuff into 3 fictional books, the Illuminatus trilogy. I'd recommend it. They're a great read, dear. Okay. Right. Okay, so the Book of the Law, Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law. Now, I've tried to find evidence of this. I read the Book of the Law, I imagine about 20 years ago or something. I can't exactly remember when clearly, but it was a while ago. It was probably about 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. But I distinctly remember reading in the introduction that you should only read it once. You should read the Book of the Law all the way through. It's not that long. It doesn't take that long, a couple of hours, if you're a fairly quick reader. So you read it all the way through once, and then never look at it again. Don't study it at all. So that's what I did. But when you look at videos about Crowley and the Book of the Law and stuff, you find people talking about studying it and stuff. And so it seems to me that they misunderstood this. And the video I was just watching recently about by Robert Anton Wilson, he's talking about the Book of the Law. And he mentions that throughout all of Crowley's writings, he mentions first of all that Crowley was a great hoaxer. He'd done all kinds of tricks on people. You know, he used to say things that didn't make sense and that contradicted other things that he said. Right? He cultivated a sort of reputation of being a. But he's a hard guy to understand, you know, because another thing that Robert Anton Wilson mentions that is quite relevant, I think, about if you're trying to judge Crowley and understand Crowley, is that he never spent a day in prison. He was never imprisoned, right? So all the things he might have done, he never was put in prison for anything. And it's not like he had loads of money, so he could like pay people off. And you know, a lot of the time he was writing his stuff, writing books to try and make money so that he could survive. You know, and some of the things he'd done was to create publicity and infamy so that he could create money. It was like a strategy to sort of a survival strategy, basically. You know, he just used the gifts that he had to create money for himself so he could survive and do the things he wanted to do. Okay, but about the Book of the Law, it said, from what I remember, it said at the beginning, you only read it once all the way through and never read it again. So that's what I've done. And that's what I've carried on doing. I've got no intention of looking at it again or studying it. Now, when I've actually looked into this because I'm wondering, I've not heard other people talking about it. Because when you see videos about the Book of the Law, people go into it and they study it and they talk about it and stuff. And I'm not really interested. What I'm really interested in, I want to make sure that I wasn't imagining stuff when I read this. When it said, "Don't read this book again." Oh, hi. Yeah, when it said "don't read this book again," it was like I want to see people talking about this phenomena. You know, there's another book. Well, it's a series of books by Stephen King. The Dark Tower series. There's about 7 books, and right at the end of the 7th book, he says, "Don't read the last chapter." Or, you know, he says, "Don't read the last chapter because I don't want you to read it. My advice as an author is that you don't read the last chapter," right? So I didn't read it. I read all the other 7 books all the way through. I got to the last chapter and Stephen King said, "Don't read the last chapter." So I just didn't read it. I've talked to other people who read it and they said it was a great ending. They really enjoyed the last chapter. But to me, I didn't read it, and I'm really glad that I didn't read it. You know, if an author says to me, do this is what the book's for, then that's what it's supposed to be. That's how you do it. You've got to follow the instructions. So when it comes to the Book of the Law, I would just, to me, it seems like the right thing to do is to take the advice at the beginning of the book and only read it through. But then again, I'm not even sure if that was true. Maybe I imagined it, but that's how I remember it. I remember it saying, only read it once, all the way through, and never think about it again. Never study it. But that's not what most people do. I've never heard anyone talk about it. I've looked at videos about quite a lot of videos about the Book of the Law, but they never talk about that. You're not supposed to study it because I think they've ignored that advice and they've studied it. And I just can't help thinking they've lost the plot a bit. Crowley spent some time in Italy, didn't he? He built his Temple of Thelema in Italy until Mussolini kicked him out. See, what I found out about Crowley is that he was an incredible guy. He's really intelligent. He done loads of interesting work. You know, he was a pioneering guy in many ways, and naturally, that sort of thing, that sort of personality, people don't like them. People try to demonize like revolutionaries. He's a revolutionary thinker, so people try to demonize him, and he encouraged it. What's so interesting about him is that he encouraged it. He wanted to be known as an evil monster. It's just so interesting. But he didn't actually, as far as I can tell, he didn't do a lot of evil stuff. He never spent any time in prison. He didn't have any huge power. You know, he didn't like, you know, have loads of people, like armies working for him or anything like that. You know, or not the sort of power that people think of as you know, normal sort of material power. He wasn't rich. He didn't have armies. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about the Book of the Law because that's how I understand it. It's not something to be talked about. It's not something that should be studied. Or if you're going to be look at these things, just reading it through once. It's like a program. If you start going, the thing is, the reason why he said that, I imagine, is because if you start looking into it and trying to analyze it and study it, it will unravel. It will make you go a bit crazy. It's like I still got to think of something. It's like, you know, it's like getting married. You only want to get married once. You get married once, and that's it. You know, so you read the Book of the Law once, and that's it. That's it. It's like getting married. You only get married once. Okay, that's about it, really. I don't want to waste your time. Have a great time, everyone. Have a great day. If you ever read the Book of the Law, just read it once. Don't look at it ever again. That's my advice.